revenue collection. That's at the heart of it, revenue collection. But not just general revenue collection, it's revenue collection focused on the informal sector. Don't worry, what you're seeing on the screen is not my slide. Thankfully, I've got a backup, So revenue collection, like I said, is not on the formal, it's on the informal. There must be a reason. And then we're talking about leveraging technology to optimize revenue collection within the informal sector. And because we're typical Africans, we're always people who take delight in words. And in African philosophy, they'll tell you, it's afternoon already. If you suddenly see an elderly person running in the afternoon, it's either the person is chasing something. So what are we here to chase? Definitely together as professionals, we're here to chase something. Something is chasing us, and so we're chasing something. And that's why I'm saying we're going to be telling the story. So if you're expecting to hear about technology from me, I'm sorry to disappoint you up front. Something is chasing us, and so we're chasing something. And in essence, we're talking about the informal sector. Why has the informal sector suddenly assumed, why have we suddenly gotten interested in the informal sector? Why? There must be a reason. Something is happening. Something is happening to us as a country, to everybody, and so we can't deny that. And we're going to see a number of slides that tells us the kind of problem we're facing as a people and why we need to take responsibility for ourselves. So this is about taking responsibility for ourselves. And I want to say thank you to the CITN, particularly the Southwest Conference, for bringing this to the fore. Because I was asking myself, I said, so what exactly is our business in this? How does this concern us? We are not ordinarily responsible for running the affairs of state, but it is very clear we need to play the role. So across 5 dimensions, I'll just give a brief background, what we're facing in Nigerian revenue collection, the informal sector, and how tech comes into play. And that makes my job very easy. So, 6 things to take away, so that you remember this, 6 things to take away. The first will be, effective revenue collection will continue to be the foundation for countries to be able to respond to the provision of infrastructure for citizens and businesses. And so the key word there, the first thing we're taking away is effective revenue collection. Just not revenue collection, effective revenue collection. So if you've got a population of X and your need is Y, and you're able to get Z from the X to meet the requirements of Y, you don't have a problem. Yeah. But the problem starts when Y you're collecting is no longer sufficient, or Z you're collecting is not sufficient to meet the needs, and that seems to be the problem. But we know for any government to be effective, to deliver on the mandate of governance, effective revenue collection is a must. Number 2, as a country, oil has been a major source of revenue. So we will not be gathered here today, probably not talking about informal, if oil had continued to play its role to serve us as spoiled children who continue to live on extractive industry. Okay, I didn't know you were giving control to me. But that's still not maximized. Can we have that maximized in presentation mode? Is it possible? Okay, thanks. So that's what's done. I want to see if it's going to go on to the next place. Yeah. Okay, right. Nigeria's major source of revenue has continued to be crude oil, and this is our 62nd year of independence, but it's still largely a mono economy, largely dependent on oil. And what do we do about this? If everything was still on the ascendancy, we will not probably have any problem. But the honest truth is, this has always been there, and there have also always been other sources of revenue we ignored. We're just plunged into a shock because oil production is declining for many reasons. Many reasons. We know some of those reasons. Many reasons. And different cycles, we've got the prices going up, and we're asking ourselves, why are we not benefiting from the increase in price of oil? There's so many disruptions, so many things to do. At the bottom of it is that we need more money. Efforts have been made in recent years to grow tax base and increase compliance, and we've largely focused on the formal sector. That's yielding some results. And I know for about maybe between 8 and 10 years, I was chairman of a CBN committee. I think that was from 2008, where we were trying to see how we could create an environment where technology could increase revenue from tax collections. And that was an imperative that gathered so much strength from the private and public sector that led to another initiative that was the government flows, going around the country on the basis of technology for increasing tax. So it's an area I'm familiar with. And so efforts have been made. The reality, okay, this is supposed to be better. Okay, thank you. And efforts have been made. Like I said, something is definitely chasing us. We're getting to realize that meeting our obligations as government and as citizens is getting increasingly challenging. So we're making efforts. But it's also within the same African context that you get to understand that it's possible for the chicken to be sweating, but you will not still see the sweat because there are feathers. But in this instance, it looks like the feathers are being plucked and everybody can see the sweat, so we really need to get to do a lot more. Current tax base is mainly comprised of the formal sector, but we know that the informal sector is actually big, huge, has potentials. And so we're gathered to say, how do we translate the potentials in the informal sector to the formal, leveraging technology? That's the essence. And it's so clear that this discussion is just going to be on points 5 and 6. We're going to validate to ourselves that the informal sector owns the key to unlocking untapped tax revenues. And the lead paper and the one we had in the morning has situated this in context. And all we're saying about point number 5, therefore, is how do we use technology to unlock? We're all convinced, there are times this is a thing to do, but you just don't know how. And so we're going to focus on that. And then we're going to speak to it, technology, to optimize tax collections in the informal sector. So the pictures we're going to be painting. Okay, let's hope this gets its out right. Right. Revenue profile. This is not strange to all of us. This is common literature everywhere. Oil revenues, and we're seeing it down there. Crude oil, petroleum profit tax, rents and royalties, penalties, non-oil, direct and indirect taxes, customs and duties, fees, fines and charges, all of that. Since 1970s, this is what we've thrived on. And so it's time to move on to other things. All right, so this is just a picture, graphic to show us Nigeria's revenue profile. I'm trying to continue to paint the picture of what is chasing us and what are we therefore chasing. The good thing is we're responding to the stimulus, either because we're left with no choice, which is called enlightened self-interest. Even if everybody wanted to leave Nigeria, there's not enough space to accommodate all of us. So some of us are stuck here, by the way. And we're not stuck complaining, we're stuck saying we can make life better, we can do something. So to understand that, the graph there shows us about a 13-year window, what happened to our crude oil export earnings from 2008, and you can see what happened to us in 2020, crude oil export earnings, and then 2021, we're not even in 2019 or 2018. what used to happen then. So there's a plunge. But what is interesting is, ordinarily, if you look at the production versus oil price, while production is declining, price is going up. So ordinarily, we shouldn't have any problem. We shouldn't. Because for the same 1,000 barrels, so if you were producing 1,000 barrels at some point, and it was $10, and you're producing 50 barrels at $100, you're supposed to be better off. So something is happening. So there are many more things to fund. Population is growing, infrastructure is decaying. We need to replenish and restore infrastructure and build new ones. And someone is whispering that there's also leakages. That means we're subsidizing other economies in other ways. So there's a problem that says we need to look elsewhere to finance and fund the economy. But there are some fundamentals we must speak to. Because if you don't want to be a basket case, one thing you can assume is that if the leakage was to be constant, 10% leakage of every 100%, now if you make more, you're assuming it's only 10% that also leak. But truth is, the preponderance to increase leakage also follows earnings, because you won't face it. So you can see we are discussing a social issue that is presenting itself within the purview of a professional platform. But that is our reality. So all of these things have to be addressed. And like I said, as right-minded professionals, we've taken a position to be part of addressing this, and that's why we're looking in some other direction. And when I was thinking about it, because we're talking about the informal economy, it is not impossible, and that is the point when I'm rounding off I'll be speaking to, when we talk about advocacy and national orientation on the professional platform. We have bred a generation of people who have become used to subsidies as free gifts. They do not believe that some people are generating the things being passed to them. And so when they themselves flow into the productive sector, they have not learned to give something back to the system. We've raised a generation where you can get everything for free, almost anything for free, even when you have the capacity to pay for it. And so when we talk about the informal sector, the starting point is we have a category of people with power to create wealth but have never been used to giving up a part of it to service the state. So the starting point is not technology, it is orientation and change. For people to believe it is a sense of responsibility to pay taxes even though you're in the informal sector. The sense of responsibility must be established. So it's going to be on a spectrum. One, the conviction to pay. Two, the compliance, the enforcement, and then the incentives to make this happen. But we must start from that, because technology on its own does not solve problems, may not ultimately solve problems, even though it can step in. Because there are different ways you can use technologies to enforce compliance, even when it's not coming, based on conviction. And we know those two C's of human behavior. Those two C's of human behavior here can either coerce people or you can convince them. When people are convinced, it's easier. Coercion is not sustainable. So even when we bring in technology, there must be an affinity based on conviction to want to comply. And we're going to see how that's going to play out. So in the last 2 decades, these are the kind of things that have happened. There's no point dwelling too much on this. We know we used to have about 2.1 million barrels a day between 2000 to 2010. That declined to 1.7, 2011 to 2020 average, but by 2021, it had come down to about 1.5. So we need to speak to those. So if your mainstay is declining in terms of output, even if prices keep going up, it's just a matter of time. By the time this tends to zero, even if the price is $1,000 per barrel, you have nothing. Because you've decimated the productive capacity for different reasons. And so we need to look at how do we get responsible to ourselves to make sure that the economy continues to thrive. So revenue collection, you can say for a fact that within the organized and the extractive industry is very well organized, oil at the very forefront of it, that it's not the common practice to evade taxes there, so to say, because whatever you measure there, even if you measure, the one you measure at least, you can get things out from earnings. But But if you look at revenue collection in itself, talking about things that are not based on the oil earnings, on the left you can see oil versus non-oil revenue. I don't know how close you are, there are no secondary screens. I thought those would be on, but it's fine. So the black part is the oil revenue. Non-oil revenue is in gray. And you can see by 2021, non-oil revenue is spiking. Non-oil revenue is beginning to spike. And that's a positive for us as a country. It's a jolt to reality. We just must wake up. And so, again, thankful that this is a platform to help us wake up to that reality. To say, this is exactly what we should be doing. This is exactly what we should be doing. We cannot forever thrive on natural resources in its natural form, where all we're doing, unfortunately at this point, is just get it out and we're still shipping out for value addition. So the value addition has not taken place yet because the refineries are down and everything. And that's one of the reasons why we need to fund more, because what we're going to get out of the crude we're shipping is going to be our commercial rates, our prevailing rates, yeah? So price of oil is out of government's hands. The only thing we have in control of is non-oil revenue. That's the only thing we're in control of. Because there are different cartels that determines how much oil is sold for, what quantity you can produce, but the things we have control over, to a large extent, non-oil revenue. Over the years, the FGN has implemented a number of initiatives to boost non-oil revenues. And not just the federal government, we know a number of states have also undertaken this responsibility on themselves. Whereas some people call Lagos the tax hub of West Africa, we know some other states have also taken responsibility. A number of the internal revenue services across states are being manned by professionals, members of this great institute, who are beginning to put in place different approaches to ensuring their states can be viable and they can optimize their IGR in those states. As of August 2021, just last year, less than a year, we achieved 15% above target in non-oil revenue. So that's some positive thing.
Recording in progress.
Taxation is typically a primary source of government revenue. And in the US, about 94% taxes. South Africa, about 98%. In Ghana, about 80%. You professionals know the percentage in Nigeria. So if we want to go to where we're going, we need to what's called peer review mechanism. If we want to be like other people, then we need to behave like other people. We need to check the benchmarks that made them become the kind of things we want to become. But we're Nigerians, so we never give up. These are just indices that tells us that there are opportunities we can leverage, and there are people who are thinking about changing the story. And so we know that the informal sector poses a huge problem in non-oil revenue collection, despite ongoing initiatives. And it is not for nothing it is called informal. But it is informal only to the extent that we allow it to be called informal. So informal can be a label, because we know what we mean by organized and unorganized sectors. We know what we mean by formal and informal. But we know at the end of it, these are still human systems being driven by humans, and so there are patterns. And that's why we're talking about this, about what technology can do. And I mentioned earlier the kind of change in behavior that will help us achieve this objective. If you look at the ease of payment, ease of doing business index, and we have this in the public domain. This is the story, ease of doing business. Ease of paying taxes report in 2020. See, paying tax. To pay tax, it took 343 hours for entities to comply with tax payments. 343 hours for entities to comply. An entity will need to pay about 48 different tax payments to the authorities in a year, 48. This is enough disincentive to anyone who was even operating on the viewpoint of conviction. So when it is coercion, you can get by, but you're just hurting and harming yourself. So the point is clear why it's called ease of doing business. It therefore means we need to keep investing in approaches and processes that makes it easy to do business, because at the end of the day, government happens to be the net beneficiary. We tax system because we got used to getting things for free. As it is now, total tax share of GDP is below the World Bank recommended ratio of 15%. Part of the problem, a lot of things are so-called informal, according to IMF. We just keep saying this is informal and we've just left it there. But we know that a lot of things can be done, and so I'm positively challenged that we're talking about it. And I want to believe there are people here who contributed to the 2020 Finance Act, and we know that's going to help. Like I said, I was at the center of championing this CBN guideline on electronic collection of payments, salaries and things, because you know that by virtue of that alone, a number of things can happen. And okay, some disclosures, because that happened on account of another project. In 2006, the Nigerian government decided to computerize payroll operations in the country, right? 2006, and that's IPs. Yeah, and I was the project director. Because System Specs was the provider of the software for the national payroll in 2006. It was a World Bank project. And I led 4 other Nigerian companies to implement that project in about 5 months. One of the things that struck us, and I'm speaking from the tax point of view, is that even pay that civil servants of the federal government were to pay was not getting to FRS in time. Government to government transaction. Right? Government to government, meaning government's funds could not even be used to solve government's problems. And you don't want to know what was that. Okay, why do I want to say you don't want to know? You are the tax professional, so you know what was happening. And because these funds were in different banks, anybody who had responsibility for remitting taxes could determine how long these funds were out of government's hands. Yeah. And that's federal government to federal government, because the honest truth is, by what you know, taxes are supposed to be paid to the states of residence. It will interest you to know that state governments did not know what was due to them in terms of pay for federal government employees. How would you know? That was one of the problems IPs was created to solve. And for the first time ever, we were able to remit every month the due pay taxes from federal government to states. And that became another problem. Because there are what is called by what we now know the unintended consequences of introduction of technology. Before now, people were waiting till end of year. That's when you were doing it. Then the next thing is this money is going to be coming. That's when some states even knew what they were supposed to be getting. And after that, you will ask yourself, where would you go to apply for your tax certificate as citizens? I mean, you're paying tax already. Are you going to collect it from? Where were people getting it from? A number of things began to happen. And that's when you also realize that it transcended, even though this was a payroll project, it transcended just pay tax, but that opened the eyes of many state governments to what was possible. If it was happening at the federal, meant it could happen at the states. So many of the states went on to introduce technology into the payment of salaries, because what it will do on its own, you are dealing with discrete data, predictable data, and it could easily free up funds to you. And what it meant therefore, because your tax professional is that you could easily even collateralize some of the outflows from government for other purposes. So you can build a model around many things. Because it's supposed to be money, see, it sounds simple. This is government money coming back to government, kind of. That's what it sounds like. But you can plan with that. But before now, not many people knew what that was about. So there was another plan championed by the CBN to say, yes, can we make it easier also to put technology behind all of this so that you're not just paying salaries electronically, it's been proven at the national level, but you're also paying suppliers. You're also paying pensions, and you're paying taxes. And we came up with a framework that went through different iterations, and we went around the country on advocacy. So I was doing the work as a patriotic Nigerian, going around and I said the business to run. So you will learn a lot of things in Nigeria, doing business in Nigeria. If you really want this country to move forward. It can be painful at times, but there's no giving up. We just need to do that. So this also lent itself to some discoveries. Because for the very first time, even though we're talking about presumptive tax here and non-prescriptive, I just laid the background, it became clear that having data on tax-paid entities could be of advantage. And having it in digital form can be very advantageous because it makes it also easy to plan and you can deal with more discrete figures. The federal government also came up, I think that's about 5 years now. We are familiar with the VATE program. It brought in about 70 billion. I wish that could have been pushed further. 70 billion, you think it's a lot, but then this is Nigeria. Criteria for effective taxes. If you remember, the first E of this presentation talked about effective tax collection. 3 things: equity and fairness. Equity and fairness, impartial, and everybody believes they are paying a fair share. The people who believe they are at the end of the stick will not want to be part of what you're saying. So there must be a way for people to believe they're being treated fairly and they're paying a fair share. It must be simple. It just must be simple. I must be able to understand it easily, and that just makes processes easier. And that's one of the things that we'll see technology does, and how it does it. There are times you are not even aware that you're paying taxes. It's already wired in. Today, nobody's going to explain to you at the retail point there's something called VAT. That's just, even though you say the price is this, plus that, then it should be efficient, and that's where we come in. The tools of technology, ensuring that things go at the speed at which we want them to happen, and so that puts us more in control of the things we want to do. This is not efficient. Yeah. Okay. And so just an overview of the informal sector, sitting on what we've heard earlier. It's made up of 65% of the Nigerian workers, contributes 49.7% of the GDP, is a 90% of new jobs, right? And COVID has opened our eyes to so many things. Now, the pressure of people traveling to live outside of Nigeria to get jobs outside of other reasons has changed, because quite a number of people, especially the younger people, are able to work here and earn forex. I'm sure we're aware of that. So what's the tax component of the forex they're earning? How does it happen? It becomes invisible because these are just transfers. They're just transfers. And because it's derived from forex calculation, this is huge, that if ordinarily you were just applying a component of tax on, because they are still here, they still want to benefit from government, but the honest truth is there's no mechanism that's been put in place for anything to happen. So the benefit, so while other people will be thinking of COVID as a negative, the honest truth is to a large extent in terms of opening up of job opportunities to tech-enabled Nigerians and even service-oriented Nigerians, the new source of earning. And you'll be amazed. There was, and it may sound ridiculous, but I don't know if some of you run tech businesses here. Today, $1,000 is how much in Naira today? $1,000? 650,000 Naira. 615 Naira. 615,000. So let's call it 600,000 Naira. Yeah. That is the... Who earns that in government on a monthly basis? As in salary, who earns that in government today? So maybe a level 8 officer, right? A director? No, it can't be that bad now. As I've been telling you that professors earn 400,000. But this is what is happening. There was someone I was interviewing for a tech role At least if I wanted to replace myself as MD, I would know that's a problem. And the guy says, okay, it's a specialized area, database management at scale. And if it was the year I graduated and I taught in school that he was born, I would still have been shocked at the amount he was asking for. And he says, can you think of $12,000? I thought he meant for 10 years. And you would think he meant for 1 year. This guy says $12,000 a month. What's that in Naira? Well, 6.6 million entry level for that role. But he's earning that today working from outside, from not traveling here. And so if you want to plot that, you begin to see that for some of the people who think ASU strike is also a negative, if it was in the years when we couldn't do anything, when we were just held back, we would have been crying, go back. A lot of them are engaged in the gig economy. A lot of money is flowing in here, but nothing is happening to it. So when I said what we are chasing, we need to even understand the picture. Since we're talking about the informal sector and the opportunities that are being birthed so that we're not lacking the problem we're trying to solve. And that is not just in one area. There are many other things that are happening in trade, invisible trade, that you're wondering how the tax component is happening. And thankfully the government is responding, because now you know many of the international platforms have to begin to comply with some standards. If you're in Nigeria, whether you're subscribing to Facebook or this, there's some taxes. So we've started very well, but there's just still a lot more. But what this is showing us is quite a number of things are transiting to the informal sector. Quite a number of things are transiting to the informal sector. And it would be nice to know the procedure for anyone to get in today as a single entrepreneur. Is it possible? Can someone take me through that process? Somebody wants to hire me to work for them. I myself, I want to, because I go to church on Sundays, I want to start paying tax. How do I register to get my TIN immediately? How many minutes will it take? How many minutes? Come on, it shouldn't be this quiet. Since we're here to solve a problem together, leveraging technology, and so, sir, 3 hours? It can't be that long now. Exactly. So the first thing is, are they even aware that that's a starting point? That when you want to start earning, the starting point is, no matter what you do, don't forget I talked about orientation earlier, but nobody has told them that if you earn anything on account of service you offer, you owe it duty to pay back. They're not even aware. So that's what envy them. It's not even, they are actually helping to attract some financing, some funding to this economy. So let's prepare to be part of the wealth that is coming in, because that's all informal. They don't even need to register a business. But if we wanted them to also register a business, it will therefore be in our interest to make it easy. Guy, even if you're in the university without a degree, once someone is going to pay you for service rendered, you have a responsibility to give something to the state. But because we have a background where we got everything for free, education, free, health, free. But the honest truth is the state was paying. When the state is no longer able to pay and want to provide those things, the people therefore must pay. If we're not going to get it out of the pockets of the people, we must have sustainable processes where these funds will come from. And that's where we develop responsible citizenship. The state collecting tax and non-state people also collecting tax. So we have a national treasury and we have non-national treasury. And this exists at different levels. For the non-national treasury, let me just give you one example, and it's very organized. Union of Road Transport Workers. Annual basis, how much do you think ends up in that sub-national treasury? A rough idea, in one state. Millions, have it? Yeah? Trillions. And it's no joke, you'll be surprised. And that's why, like I said, the storytelling, because these things are with us. But I'm more excited that we're responding as a body to say we want to be part of solving this. So there's not clear visibility into the wealth so being created. It's not being taxed, it ends in private pockets. But there are things we can do without disrupting the economy. Because those are just sub-economics. And nature abhors a vacuum. If you've not put the structure in place to extract tax, other people are going to extract tax. And we have a very unfortunate situation today where bandits are now extracting taxes. But the money ends somewhere. The money doesn't go up in the smoke. And before you trade, they say pay this, and people are paying. So money is moving. Where is it moving to? And I hope it's going to form part of the problems we plan to solve. It may sound that far away, but because money is moving, how exactly, anywhere it moves and anywhere, can the tax component drop? So that's why I say non-state actors, and there are ways of getting into that using technology. Whether it is levies or fines, or even when there are concessions that still sit on political patronage, the state can still benefit, since we're talking about that. So we're going to be getting this. So I'm going to speak to these 6 boxes, and then we're going to round off. I don't know if there are going to be questions after, so that we can continue the storytelling. Lack of coordination resulting in multiple fees and levies. We have the federal, we've got the states, and we've got the local government. We've got JTB in between, and we've got ourselves. We need to hasten the process of harmonizing the different taxes. And I must salute that the improvement that have happened. But this coordination, we need to just see how we can get it done better. Harassment and intimidation by local tax collectors. That tells us the level of development where we are when you need to be harassed. Just imagine that the only way you can get school fees from your parents is by hiring people to come to the front of your house and join you in crime. And when they ask them what's happening, they say, I just lost my father. And the man say, but I'm alive. Say, but you have not paid my fees. So are you better than a living man? So nobody wants to be harassed. I'm sorry, but I'm a storyteller. It just happened to be in technology. Harassment, intimidation by tax. Nobody thrives in an environment where you are reminded of your responsibility this way. Lack of information on businesses. As we're seated here today, only God knows how many side businesses each one of us run that nobody knows anything about. And so we're evading taxes ourselves, and we're talking about compliance with taxes. Even when you're selling eggs at the back of your house, if you're doing hampers for Christmas, and everything just ends in your pocket. Formal sector needs help in funding government spend, improving the nation's tax to GDP ratio. We're bringing it down. Informal sector players we need to make them see advantage in paying tax electronically, leveraging technology. This is going to give them some protection. This is going to open them up to more opportunities. Organizations within the informal sector themselves can become agents of government to lower the cost of tax collections by government, expand the tax net. And this is for those of us who may be interested in some of the things, and that's a bit about us. Thank you very much.
I always find it difficult when I see a professor taking charge and is a discussant. I don't know where to start, but the fact remains that a professor cannot be a discussant of a paper like this, and I will say I want to have anything to say, but Professor Sonny, you are welcome, sir. God bless you, my pleasure. I will be calling you in a short while to come and do the final cap on this paper. But it is important that I just emphasize that Mr. Atonda Deremi, you have done a very good work. And I simply need to mention that it's a known fact that there are people in the economy that are doing wonderfully, but the government is not actually tapping to them to get the best for our economy. One of the striking points made by Mr. Deremi is the fact that all revenue is crashing, no doubt about that, and we need to do something about the informal sector. He also mentioned that the organization within this informal sector can be used as agents. I agree with him absolutely. There's no doubt about it. And also, he mentioned that technology can be used to leverage. But there are critical areas I know Professor Abiola Sani will help us look into. Talking about technology in the informal sector, majority of the players are illiterate. They don't even understand what technology is all about. it means there should be a synergy between the administrators as well as the taxpayers. On this note, Professor Abiola Sani, I would like to hand over the microphone to you